I returned to the praetorium, sad and pensive. On ascending the stairs, the steps of which were still stained with the blood of the Nazarene, I perceived an old man in a suppliant posture, and behind him several Romans in tears. He threw himself at my feet and wept most bitterly. It is painful to see an old man weep, and my heart being already overcharged with grief. We, though strangers, wept together, and in truth it seemed that the tears lay very shallow that day with many whom I perceived in the vast concourse of people. I never witnessed such an extreme revulsion of feeling. Those who betrayed and sold him, those who testified against him, those who cried, "Crucify him, we have his blood," all slunk off like cowardly curs and washed their teeth with vinegar, as I am told that Jesus taught a resurrection and a separation after death. If such should be the fact, I am sure it commenced in this vast crowd. "Father," said I to him, after gaining control of my feelings, "who are you and what is your request?" "I am Joseph of Arimathea," he replied, "and I have come to beg of you upon my knees the permission to bury Jesus of Nazareth." "Your prayer is granted," said I to him, and at the same time I offered Manlius to take some soldiers with him to superintend the interment, lest it should be profaned. A few days after the sepulchre was found empty, his disciples proclaimed all over the country that Jesus had risen from the dead, as he had foretold. This created more excitement even than the crucifixion. As to its truth, I cannot say for certain, but I have made for some investigation of this matter, so you could examine for yourself and see if I am at fault, as Herod represents. Joseph buried Jesus in his own tomb. Whether he contemplated his resurrection or calculated to cut himself another, I cannot tell. The day after he was buried, one of the priests came to the praetorium and said they were apprehensive that his disciples intend to steal the body of Jesus and hide it, and then make it appear that he had risen from the dead, as it had been foretold, and of which they were perfectly convinced. I sent him to the captain of the royal guard, Malchus, to tell him to take care the Jewish soldiers, place as many around the sepulchre as were needed. Then if anything should happen, they could blame themselves and not the Romans. When the great excitement arose about the sepulchre being found empty, I felt a deeper solicitude than ever. I sent for Malchus, who told me he had placed his lieutenant Ben Isham with 100 soldiers around the sepulchre. He told me that Isham and the soldiers were very much alarmed at what had occurred there that morning. I sent for this man Isham, who related unto me, as near as I can recollect, the following circumstances. He said that about the beginning of the 4th watch, they saw a soft and beautiful light over the sepulchre. He at first thought that the woman had come to embalm the body of Jesus, as it was their custom, but he could not see how they had gotten through the guards. While these thoughts were passing through his mind, behold, the whole place lighted up, and there seemed to be crowds of the dead in their grave, clothed. All seemed to be shouting and filled with ecstasy, while all around and above was the most beautiful music he had ever heard, and the whole air seemed to be full of voices praising God. At this time there seemed to be a reeling and swimming of the earth, so that he turned so sick and faint that he could not stand on his feet. He said the earth seemed to swim from under him, and his senses left him, so that he knew not what did occur. I asked him in what condition was he when he came to himself, and he said he was lying on the ground with his face down. I asked him if he could not have been mistaken as to the light. Was it not day that was coming in the east? He said at first he thought of that, but at a stone's cast it was exceedingly dark. Then he remembered it was too early for day. I asked him if his dizziness might not have come from being wakened up and getting up too suddenly, as if sometimes it had that effect. He said it was not, and had he not been asleep all night, as the penalty was death for him to sleep on duty. He said he had let some of the soldiers sleep at a time. Some were asleep. Then I asked him how long had the scene lasted. He said he did not know, but he thought nearly an hour. He said it was hid by the light of day. I asked him if he went to the sepulchre after he had come to himself. He said no, because he was afraid that just as soon as relief came, they all went to their quarters. I asked him if he had been questioned by the priest. He said he had. They wanted him to say it was an earthquake and that they were asleep, and offered him money to say that the disciples came and stole Jesus. But he saw no disciples. He did not know that the body was gone until he was told. I asked him what was the private opinion of those priests he had conversed with. He said that some of them thought that Jesus was no man, that he was not a human being, that he was not the son of Mary, that he was not the same that was said to be born of the Virgin in Bethlehem, that the same person had been on the earth before with Abraham and Lot, and at many times in many places. It seems to me that if the Jewish theory be true, these conclusions are correct, for they are in accord with this man's life. As it is known and testified by both friends and foes, for the elements were no more in his hands than clay in the hands of a potter. He could convert water into wine. He could change death into life, disease into health. He could calm the seas, still the storms, call upon fish with a silver coin in its mouth. Now I say, if he could do all these things which he did and many more, as the Jews all testify, and it was doing these things that created this enmity against him, he was not charged with criminal offenses, nor was he charged with violating any law, nor of wrongdoing any individual in person. And all these facts are known to thousands, as well by his foes as by his friends. I am almost ready to say, as I did Manlius at the cross, truly, this was the Son of God. Now, noble sovereign, this is as near the facts in the case as I can arrive, and I have taken pains to make the statement very full, so that you may judge of my conduct upon the whole. As I hear that Antipater has said many hard things about me in this matter, with the promise of faithfulness and good wishes to my noble sovereign, I am your most obedient servant, Pontius Pilate.